the madhouse.
Cheers to episode 1.
Episode 1.
Tito's.
Bacardi Limon.
Old-fashioned smart water that gets it done.
All right, we are recording at 7:50 p.m. on Monday, January 18th, 2021, and the Lions have hired some people. Evan, what are your thoughts?
So first, I think we're going to start with the GM, Brad Holmes.
Bradley Holmes.
Bradley.
I don't know what his real name is.
It's Brad.
On his
I
birth
think
certificate.
It's a good hire from the start, from just like the aspect of it. I think my biggest point is that he has drafted 37 Pro Bowlers in his 18 years that he's been the head college scout.
How many was it? How many Pro Bowlers?
37 Pro Bowlers, where compared to the Lions in the same amount of time, the past 18 years, it's like
8.
not even.
I think it's 8.
Yeah, might be 8.
Wow. So is that individual Pro Bowlers, or is that like if Aaron Donald gets it 8 different times?
I think it's if Aaron Donald gets it 8 different
Good
times.
question. Don't know.
But not
Probably like it's like cumulative.
Yeah.
So overall, optimistic.
I would say optimistic. And plus, that is on top of him not having a first-round pick from 17 through 20. Didn't have a first-round pick.
Years 2017 to 2020.
Yep.
Yes.
What'd they
didn't
do
have a
this-
First-round pick. He's utilizing the picks,
Traded them
I would
for
say,
Gary
from looking back at the last couple of drafts, is like the third round.
Yeah.
He is hitting on talent in the third round where they're starters now for the team.
Brad Holmes hitting on talent in the third round. What's your like? Do you have any like cons or negatives to it?
I think from a quote from the president, Rod Wood, the biggest con is that he says he's a big analytic guy. I know football is going more towards the analytics, but I'm just not a big fan when you're scouting.
You're
I'm more of an eye test.
you're a gut guy. You're like a
Yes.
feel guy.
I am a gut guy. Go for the instincts. I see eye tests. You know, I'm not Skip Bayless. I'm not going all on eye tests. But I think there's a lot of for football's eye tests.
But have you seen Moneyball? All analytics.
Oh my God!
All
It is
analytics.
baseball. That is baseball.
Wow.
This is not even close. This
It
is
worked.
So the Lions hired Jonah Hill.
Yes. Fat Jonah.
Oh no,
Only if it's fat Jonah Hill, not skinny Jonah Hill.
Alex.
All right.
Thoughts?
So
I'm Bradley Holmes.
I'm not as excited as Evan, I would say. Obviously, he mentioned good third-round talent. So Cooper Kupp came out of the third round. Their safety, John Johnson, came out of the third round.
What a name on that guy,
So, yeah, pretty basic name.
John Johnson.
But, so, he's gotten some good talent from the draft, but this is my big fact that's like a big problem to me. The last 3 GMs we hired who have never been a GM before. Bob Quinn,
I'm nervous.
Matt Millen,
Boss.
and
Boss.
Martin Mayhew.
Those are 3 guys that had never been GMs before.
Yes. Just like Bradley Holmes over here coming in. So I'm a little nervous with the unproven because the Lions have proved to not hire first-time GMs very well. So I think that's not great. And then also, he was a big guy who wanted Jared Goff. And I don't know if Jared Goff is really a franchise quarterback.
You watch your mouth.
Small hands. So, but they traded all their first-round picks and a couple other picks to trade up for Jared Goff, which is why they don't have any first-round
But
picks.
they took him over Carson Wentz.
Yes. Who went to a Super Bowl. But so did Jared Goff.
Carson
He
Wentz.
has 4 playoff wins in the Lions, so can we argue it?
No.
It's a great point. What
All
about
right,
you?
let me rip some off here. You guys stop me if you want to jump in or refute anything or agree with anything. So I have a little bit of background. 41 years old. That stands out to me. That's young. I think he's the second youngest GM in the league. I think the only one that's younger is some 30-year-old-ish in Cleveland, which is crazy. That guy is Jonah Hill in Cleveland.
Is he fat?
I don't know. I think he might be skinny, Jonah
He's
Hill.
not. He's a skinny guy.
Now, the intangibles. Well, let me not get ahead of myself. Director of College Scouting, I think we already said that. I'm just giving the boring background here. Since 2013. So I just wrote down guys that stuck out to me that he drafted, and you guys touched a lot of them already. Aaron Donald, which, first of all, I'd give him the job off of that because he took him. I mean, I know he couldn't take Ebron because we took Ebron, but that alone,
Maybe
I
he
think,
would've.
makes the hire.
Maybe he would have.
Goff, Kupp, Gurley, Cam Akers, who was stinky on Evan's fantasy team. He knows. The back half of the year is pretty good now. Higbee, serviceable tight end. John Johnson, Samson Ebukam, good rusher. Sebastian Joseph Day, and Jordan Fuller, who they got in the 6th round, who's a pretty good secondary player.
Yeah.
I compare that to the Lions since that time. So just think about those names. Think about these names. Ebron, Quandre Diggs, Taylor Decker, A'Shawn Robinson, Kenny Galladay, Agnew, Frank Ragnow, Deshaun Hand, Hawkinson, Awarrior, Swift, and Okuda. I just picked out guys that kind of stood out. I left all the busts per se out, if I could.
All Pro Bowlers. And
about the Lions drafting, the big picture here, is one thing that I noticed in the Rams was he didn't have a lot of picks to work with a lot of years. Like after the Goff deal, like you guys mentioned, he didn't have a lot of picks, which suits him well for the Lions because we have 5, which is bad, like low. But he does get the 7th pick in the draft, so he's going to have something to work with there. But only having 5 picks is pretty tough. Anything from that, guys?
The only thing I'd add is I did see today in an article that he's going to be bringing a bold approach. So you take that for what you want.
Fat Jonah Hill.
It could get crazy. Stafford could be on the move. Who knows?
Pros and cons. What was the guy from Moneyball? Sean Hattenberg that played first base? I'm just picturing him like Sean Hattenberg. That's who we're drafting.
Chris Pratt.
We're drafting Chris Pratt. So pros, intangibles that the guy has. He looks very smart. I don't know if you guys like
intelligent looking guy.
I don't know who picked the pictures for him on all the news days. He's got glasses on, dresses super sharp. Like that's got to make you feel better. Seeing a GM look like that, he looks like he knows what he's doing off the bat.
Yeah.
So that's a pro. What I liked was I saw in an article as well that he does not get blinded by combine stats, like 40-yard dashes. Which I mean, personally, I've always been like, who cares if a guy runs fast in a straight line? Can they move fast on tape? Like Evan said, you got to use your eyes on that and not just the analytics. So maybe he'll bring a mix. My cons, I think there has to be question marks around free agent signings and his cap management because we don't know at this point if he's had to do that with the Rams because as director of college scouting, there's a lot more to being a GM than just scouting.
You would guess he didn't do most of that?
Maybe. They have Les Snead, who's revered as a good GM in the league, so he's obviously learning good things, but he's also maybe not doing the full role.
Yeah.
Also, some of his scouting pros is going to take a hit because now he's not going to have as much time. He's not going to be traveling to a bunch of games and scouting people as GM. I don't think many GMs have the time to do that. So he's going to have to be good at delegating because his biggest asset was evaluating talent. It's going to be a little bit harder to do so when you're the GM and have a bunch of different jobs to do. Yeah. And my last intangible on the con side is that is such a terrible move to have to move from LA to Detroit. I mean, that is so bad.
On that note, I think another thing that needs to be mentioned is he didn't work in the Rams office. He worked from home in Atlanta.
Are you serious?
Yes. He always worked remote.
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta, Georgia.
Dude,
his hometown.
I don't know if anyone knows yet, but is there a chance he does that?
No, I believe he will be moving.
He's all in?
To Detroit.
He's got to move in.
I wouldn't hate it if he just sat in a mega room in Atlanta and just pulled the strings.
Sounds like that's what he did for the Rams.
I guess overall, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's everyone's confidence in this hire?
5.
I'm an 8.
I would say I'm an 8. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on him for sure. I think he's smart. The pictures alone sold me. I was like, this guy looks like he knows what he's talking about.
It's hard to believe in the Detroit Lions hiring someone at this point because it just hasn't worked ever. So
no, you make a good point.
We'll see.
Especially like you said, ones who have not been GMs before. But you got to start sometime.
I'm proceeding with caution. I'll give it a 5.
Speaking of guys who haven't done their job before, Dan Campbell hired by the Lions as our head coach. I'll give the intangibles of him real quick before I toss it to Evan. 44 years old. So we're gonna have a young gun decision makers in the organization. He is 6'5", 265. Now I don't know if that's what he currently is, but if you Google height and weight, that's what it comes up as. I don't know if that was his playing weight or if that's what he is now, but that is a unit of a man.
Our coach can beat up yours.
Yeah. Evan, to you.
First thing, I hate this whole notion of he's a football guy. Like he's going to come in and be just this tough. We're going to run the football. We're going to stop the run.
Yes.
We're just going to play our brand of football.
Who says no? I'm ready to run through a wall now.
Football guys.
This is not 1990 anymore. Look at the playoff teams. Okay, how many of the playoff teams had offensive-minded young coaches?
Most.
What are we doing here? He's a tight ends coach. Oh, he's a special assistant to Sean Payton.
Associate head coach.
Yeah,
he's basically the head coach in waiting.
No, that's a lie. That is a lie.
Evan thinks it's like The Office, and he's like the assistant to the regional manager for like Sean Payton.
It's no big deal. It's like, okay, here's your title. Congratulations. I'll move on. So the biggest thing was like, I wanted an offensive guy to come into Detroit. I would have to say, I don't like the signing, but from this standpoint, I would have to say I'm more worried about who's he going to hire on his staff.
Yeah, agreed.
From what he's like he's a position coach, basically. He's not a coordinator. He's not a defense or offensive coordinator. Who is he going to bring on his staff that's going to make a difference?
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that I'm going to look at. And the end on my thought, like the positive thing is he almost got the Colts job before Frank Reich got it. He was the second. He was a runner-up.
I did.
That's the only positive thing I have to say about this guy. And nice goatee, buddy. Hopefully you grow it out like Patricia did.
Yeah, I'll hop in here because I think Evan's point about the coordinators was my biggest thing I wrote down, is that he's going to need to hire 2 solid coordinators, and we can have that discussion on a different day when they get hired. It's probably going to be somewhat soon, but I think you would hope that they would hire coordinators who have done coordinating before, because I think to balance out his inexperience as head coach, you probably want some guys that know what they're doing coordinator-wise. I know maybe on one side of the ball, they give a guy a shot who's never done it before, but you kind of need a guy that's been a coordinator before in one of those spots so that you bring more experience to balance it all out. Intangibles, Alex mentioned it. We now, I think, have for sure the toughest coach in the league. There's no denying that. I think the only one that sniffs it is Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
But I just think it's a good feeling every Sunday knowing that our coach could beat up your coach in a fight.
Yeah, I agree.
His nickname, that I didn't know this till today, Dan Talica, they call him, because he loves Metallica and just plays it all the time. I mean, that's pretty cool.
I hate him even more now.
Evan's fading fast. I'm not sure today's players are going to dig that if he plays it in the locker room, but we'll see. My biggest question, too, that Evan alluded to was like his rah-rah old school approach. I'm very interested to see if he's a player's coach or if he's kind of like outdoor practice when it's freezing Matt Patricia guy. Because he played in this league, so you would think he would know what players are going through, which I think is what he should lean into. If he goes like Oklahoma drills outdoor practice, which everyone hated Patricia for doing, this might blow up in everyone's face because those players have dealt with that and they don't like that, obviously. Everyone said they were having way much more fun when Bevel was interim head coach. And I think I'm optimistic Coach Campbell will be like a player's coach because he played in this league. I think the exterior, he's going to be rah-rah, but I think he's going to understand what players go through, and that will help him.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too because he was the interim head coach of the Dolphins.
5-7.
When he took over, they were an absolute dumpster fire.
5-7.
Ryan Tannehill was yelling at scout team players, making fun of how much money they made. The team was an absolute bomb.
That's such a wild move for Ryan Tannehill to be doing that back then.
Either way, team was terrible. They were 1-3, I think, to start. He came in, changed the culture. I watched some interviews. A lot of players said they loved playing for him. Went 5-7, not great. But I think he's a guy that can come in and definitely change Detroit's like losing attitude, losing culture, which is a massive problem.
Our brand of football.
So I think he'll be more of a player's coach. My biggest concern, just like yours, never been an offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. So the only coaches that have made that jump.
Listen to this, Evan. He told me this earlier. Listen to this. This is good. This will give you hope.
Brian Flores. He's good. Joe Judge. I don't know. It's early. Can't think of the third right now.
Jonathan Harbaugh.
Johnny Harbaugh.
3 guys who were never coordinators, although some could argue special teams is kind of a coordinator, that became a head coach.
Yeah.
And I would say 2 of the 3 are pretty locked and loaded, viewed as good coaches in this league. And one is kind of like on the rise because he impressed people this year with what he had to deal with.
Yeah. And then I think another positive, he's worked with Sean Payton. I mean, that's got to be somewhat of a positive. He's pretty successful, minus the whole cheating and targeting thing. But other than that, I think overall it's probably like a B- hire, B hire.
Oh, pump the brakes. Let's do a 1 through 10 again.
Who else are you really going to get?
Well, there was a lot of names they could have gotten.
Well,
I guess
would you have preferred?
Quickly, could we all say who we would like them to hire?
I want to be on me.
Offensive guy. That makes sense based on what he said earlier. I was a solid guy just because I was blinded by the energy. And although someone could argue, then why wouldn't you like Dan Campbell? I just liked Saleh's proven like solid defenses on top of said energy. And he had the Michigan ties, which don't really matter. But I just bought into the whole. I drank the Kool-Aid on that hire, but that did not happen. Shout out the Jets. They got a good coach, I think.
We'll see, I guess. For me, I didn't really think any of the candidates were that great. And if we wanted an offensive guy, I would have rather gone for like Lincoln Riley.
Pat Fitzgerald.
No. And with Eric Bieniemy, I just worry that Andy Reid is just running that show, and I'm not sure what he's really doing because there's a reason no one's hiring him. There's a reason no one's hiring him, Evan.
No, look at all these assistants.
Well, it's because they're still playing.
Look at all these
Good
assistants.
one.
Right? He's still
They just
playing.
can't interview him.
Mike Kafka might get a job before Eric Bieniemy.
Who's Mike Kafka?
Passing game coordinator for the Chiefs.
Northwestern Wildcats, stand up.
Stand up.
Wow. Speaking of Big Ten football, Michigan had some news this weekend. It was kind of important, I would say. I mean, they're making moves. We're kind of a couple weeks past the Harbaugh extension, so we don't really need to get into that. That would have been talk for a different time. But they hired Mike Hart to coach their running backs, and they've hired Mike Macdonald? I'm going to be honest, guys. I haven't heard pronunciation. It's just not spelled normally. So I'm going to say Macdonald for their defensive coordinator. And that's pretty much it. 2 hires for Michigan football. I will toss it to the state fans first because I have a little bit more thoughts. Maybe, I don't know, you guys might surprise me on this hire. Go ahead, Alex.
I'll be just straightforward. I don't know a ton about the new DC. I know he's young. Comes from brother Johnny. So
Michael McDonald.
So maybe there's some family ties there. I don't know. I'm not really worried about it. As a Michigan State fan, we'll see what comes of it, but I don't have much thoughts on it. Evan?
Nailed it.
I think the biggest takeaway that, from my perspective, from the DC hiring, is that he had to go for his brother's advice. He took somebody from his brother's staff in the NFL because as Michigan football right now, who are they going to go and pick a defensive coordinator from? Like, whose back door are they walking in and stealing somebody's defensive coordinator?
Bo Pelini from free agency.
Go after Bo Pelini. But that was my biggest takeaway. Now, he might be really good. He coached at Georgia in 2014, from what I read today. And they picked up a special teams coordinator from Maryland this afternoon.
Breaking news.
But it's different. The NFL is extremely different from college, is that you can be able to adjust properly. But I think it's different from hiring a current defensive coordinator in college football than hiring the linebackers coach in the NFL.
The Spartan fans are not worried about next year's matchup.
No,
defensively.
not at all.
Or probably offensively either.
Not a single part of the matchup am I nervous for.
My thoughts on Michael McDonald. He's 33. I don't know why I'm the age guy this episode, but that is young, dude. That's us
Big age guy.
in 10 years. Can you imagine being the DC at a D1 program in 10 years? Crazy. I'm on board because I like his story because I think we can relate to it a little bit. The guy didn't play football past high school, which is crazy to think about in today's hiring. He went to UGA, Georgia, and he just kind of got his normal degree and then wanted to be a coach so bad that he went back to his local high school and just grinded from there, got a grad assistant job, and worked his way up. At the Ravens, I'm optimism that he's been around a good defense in the NFL for the last X amount of years. I like that he's young and hopefully is better at adapting to modern offenses because that's something Michigan struggled with mightily last year when it came to ISO coverages downfield. We can throw out, I don't know how much credit to give him for guys that are good in the NFL getting Pro Bowl nods. Like everyone in those articles like to say, oh, he coached C.J. Mosley, Matt Judon, Eric Weddle to Pro Bowls. It's I don't. Those guys might be good no matter what, right? But I like that he's been around a good offense. He's learned from good defense, learned from good defensive minds. I like that, and I think it's a good shot of youth in the program. Cons is that he's never called defensive plays before, from my knowledge. So I wouldn't mind if they hired someone with a little bit more experience and maybe did the whole co-defensive coordinator thing. That could be a move that they do to pair him with someone. Also, I guess a red flag might be with recruiting. Just wondering how he'll be at recruiting. You don't know. He's not really from around the Midwest, which Michigan hasn't always recruited just the Midwest. They go everywhere now, but I don't know. We'll see. On the other side, Mike Hart, I think that's a no-brainer hire. Obviously, I understand you guys don't like it. I would have guessed. He said some mean things back in the day. But for the rivalry, it's very good just because he's another face that is kind of almost built the rivalry in the last 15 years.
I
So
agree.
that helps. Indiana's running back, the Scott kid, was good. So I don't know what role he played in that. I think the biggest thing for Mike Hart is it's going to help recruiting because you can have a guy who's back with the program, can go into a living room and tell a kid what it was like to play at Michigan and sell him on that more. And he's got Michigan ties, obviously, so he knows the state of Michigan well if they go after those recruits. That was the biggest thing. You guys have anything on Mike Hart?
I would say it's definitely a good hire. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. With the whole recruiting thing, he's going to be able to sell to kids that, he did it, exactly what you just said. I don't know if it's good for, on the flip side, good for Michigan State or not. It might motivate them even more. So for all the Spartan fans, that could be a good thing. But it also could be a bad thing because he might be able to instill what it means to that rivalry, which I feel like Michigan's been lacking for a few years now. They just don't seem to get up for it as much.
I would agree.
So that might really help Michigan, I think, as well. And with Ohio State, too.
Yeah, good points. I actually didn't even think about that. I can picture him now giving an awesome locker room speech before the game.
Yeah.
I like that. Evan, any thoughts on that?
I think it's a smart hire. I think it's about time that he's back at his alma mater.
Come on, Evan.
I don't like it. I mean, I'm a Michigan State fan, but it's about time. My biggest thing, he was at Indiana previously. I think he was at either Eastern or Syracuse before that. What was taking Michigan so long to hire him? That's my biggest thing. And the last point I would have is he was the last Michigan running back to get drafted. So
That's a fact.
Can he develop a running back to get drafted? You get all these highly touted recruits into Michigan, and none of them get drafted.
No.
Charbonnet just transferred today, so I think it's time for maybe Mike Hart put a stamp on a couple running backs today in Michigan.
Evan, is that breaking news?
Breaking news. Who just transferred today?
Zach Charbonnet?
Yep. He's out.
Zach Charbonnet transferred?
He has entered the transfer portal as of 2 hours ago.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Yeah, so I still think it's a good hire.
So I'm hearing Donovan Edwards 150 yards on the ground next year
For the whole season?
against Michigan State.
I don't know about that.
Staying in Amazing Blue World, but basketball now. And I want to preface this by saying, right now, college basketball is the sport I'm most geeked about because it's, I think, the only team that I root for that is good right now. So take it easy on me, guys. With that being said, they lost 75-57 to Minnesota on Saturday.
Relatable.
Not great. Hey, couldn't be me.
Could not be us.
It was painful to watch. Watched it all. My first thought was I'm nervous about teams with length. This is kind of a very
Generic.
intricate. It has to be specific. But I'm nervous about teams who have length instant doubling Dickinson on his catch. But I am confident that he's a good enough player to learn how to deal with it. Because if anyone who watched that game, that was the biggest factor. Is instantly when he got the ball, Liam Robbins is on him, who's big, and then they bring in another guy right away to pressure, and he looked frazzled. And he didn't play a lot because of it. They put in Austin Davis, who played pretty well. My other thing that I'll say is I underestimated Eli Brooks' impact on Michigan's offense. I think everyone that follows the team, even casually, knows that he's a good defender and a good energy guy. But with him being out, I did not think that would lead to 20 turnovers by the Wolverines, which I don't have stats on me, but I think that's their most in a while because they're usually known as a team that doesn't foul a lot and does not turn the ball over a lot. With all that being said, and I think this should have some merit because I was dead on when I told Alex about what I thought would happen against Minnesota. I didn't think they'd lose by 20. I thought they would lose the game because it's a trap game, and Minnesota's going to play angry, which is another thing. When 18-year-olds are mad and their coach gets them fired up, it's just a different animal because a lot of times college teams lay eggs because they're just not into the game. There are other things are on their mind. Full circle, U of M by 15 tomorrow night, or tonight when you're listening, against Maryland.
I will say just on the Michigan-Minnesota front, overall, I think they had one of their worst shooting games of the season. So Livers had 11, Dickinson had 9, and Wagner had 8. So when your three best players are not really doing too much and Sean D. Brown is leading your team, it's probably not a great sign.
Sean D. Brown might be the top 5 corner three-point shooter in the country. Just keep an eye on that.
It's a hot take.
No, I'm serious.
Anyways, but what I will say, I hate to say it, but I believe Michigan is the real deal. I just think they've got a lot of good players. They don't have any superstars, I guess. You could say Dickinson is, but I think he'll go through a freshman slump like most do. But overall, their team's deep. And as you said, the Brooks thing showed that they do need their depth to win. But I think right now they're still in the driver's seat for the Big Ten.
I appreciate that validation that I needed.
Well, Minnesota's undefeated at home this year, so there's a, what do you want to call it, trap game, if not a trap game. Michigan plays well at home.
The Barn's a tough place to play.
They got Carr, who's one of the best guards in the Big Ten, but I think from watching the game, Dickinson didn't play for a majority of the first half, and I feel like their offense runs through him. If he's cooking, then everyone else is cooking. I'm not saying they're like Michigan State because we don't have a post player, but if their best player isn't scoring, then the offense is going to struggle. And obviously, if they're not knocking down threes, and then they're not going to be able to score.
It's kind of mean for you to say that about Kithier.
You just, old fashioned Tommy just, he's not 7 foot. If he was 7
He's
foot,
a great
I'd be
fundamental basketball player. He's crucial to Michigan State's success.
Yeah, I'm a Tommy Kithier fan. I'll be cheering for him to start every single game the rest of the year.
Yeah.
All the Michigan State fans on Twitter, hate him. Hate them all.
Unless you follow us, then you're pretty cool. But
We don't believe that.
it is crazy. Michigan's not had one in a while. Like, having a guy that's a legit, no joke, over 7 foot is life changing. Like, I don't know if I can go back. I mean, obviously, I'm going to have to, but it's crazy when you see a guy that big, and if they're semi-skilled at all, it's game-changing, like you said, especially because Dickinson can pass very well for a big man. Like Evan said, I like that phrase that he's cooking, then they're cooking. Jeff Hunter cooks a lot, but he did not against Minnesota, hence the result. Speaking of Kithier, I'm wondering when we're going to see him again. Michigan State basketball been on a COVID break here. Throw it to Alex for this one. He hasn't talked in a bit. What's the state of Michigan State basketball right now as a fan?
I would say, so I'll start with this. 8 players, I think, so far since March have now had coronavirus, the COVID.
Wow.
So I think we're set up well for the future of no more COVID outbreaks.
Spin zone. I
Really
love it.
important. So that's good. Bad news. Josh Langford, Sissoko, a walk-on, Davis Smith, someone else has COVID. I can't remember. Steven Izzo. Of course, I can't remember him. Not a very important player. Anyway, so another thing on that, Sissoko and Izzo are roommates. Never would have thought. Very bizarre. But anyways.
Sissoko lives with Tom Izzo. Kidding.
With Steven.
No, yeah.
But yeah.
My favorite player, Matty Sissoko, as a Michigan fan. For state. Not my favorite player in general, but favorite state player, if I had to pick one.
So those 4 have COVID. Langford got it late Wednesday, which caused the Iowa game to get canceled.
What was he doing late Wednesday?
Practicing. And then after practice, he felt kind of sick.
Practicing his dance moves at Harper's.
He was negative for Brovid and positive for COVID. Anyways, so the state of Michigan State fans, after the Purdue loss, I'm going to be completely honest, fully transparent here, I needed a break. That was a devastating loss to blow it down the stretch there, blow a 17-point lead in the second half. It was really, really tough to watch. And then to have Iowa next on the schedule was a scary task. I would never say we duck opponents, but it was okay to have a little break. With that being said, I think after, most recently the Illinois game was canceled for Saturday. I think we'll be good to go after that, and then we'll be able to see more about Michigan State basketball because, honestly, we don't know a lot. They're very inconsistent. Defense is improving, but the offense seems to be lost. So we'll see where it goes.
You guys are like Rachel and Ross on Friends. You guys just need a break right now. And you guys can go see other people in the meantime, dip your toes into NFL playoffs, and then you guys will, circle back when everyone's healthy.
And hopefully it's better than ever when we come back.
So I think it's good for everyone's mental health. Yeah. Evan, how do you see this situation?
So starting with the COVID situation, the 4 players, 2 staff members have it now, and
not the managers.
I believe it is a facility. Somebody in the Michigan State basketball facility had it have it and brought it to the players and coaching staff. I'm not saying anybody, because the women's basketball program was also out because of COVID reasons this past week or so.
There's a rat in the facility.
We shouldn't be hating on any of the players for getting it. It happens. Millions of Americans have gotten it. I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. It happened. It's Michigan State's turn to get it, and we have to sit out for 2 weeks, or now it's going to be longer. I would say it might hurt us down the stretch. As of right now, we are a bubble team, however you want to say it.
It's early. It's January.
There are games that we're missing that are winnable that we might need down the stretch. That's my biggest fear, is that when we get to Selection Sunday, we don't have enough games played. We don't have enough Quad 1, Quad 2 wins, and so we get left out. But other than that, going back to the state of Michigan State basketball, there's a little smoke there, but where there's smoke, there's fire. Offensively, we can't do much. And I look back at all the positive Michigan State basketball teams in the past. You've had a point guard that can score. We don't have a point guard right now. We have Lawyer's a backup. Rocket Watts doesn't want to play it. And Hogard is a freshman. He is talented, but he can't score
Good
the
passer.
15 to 20 points that you're going to need from that position. And defensively, we are getting better. I love to see that. But right now, I would put a little smoke on getting into the tournament because you're missing games. And down the stretch, you might have to win 5 or 6 games in a row to get into the tournament, which is tough pill to swallow or something tough to ask.
I think on that note, though, it's important to know that these games are postponed. So they can be rescheduled. We could still play them, and they can still be back on schedule. As of now, we don't know. But I wouldn't rule out those games being fully canceled. I think there's still a chance that we find a way to play those games.
This is like stuff that Joe Lenardi stays up at night just thinking about. He's like, oh God, what am I going to do with the Spartans next to bracketology? Haven't seen them in a while, and I don't know if they're going to make these up. So no, I mean, that's interesting. Evan sold it in a way that I'm intrigued to see how this all plays out. Shifting gears because I have zero transition for this. I feel like we got to talk about the Red Wings and Pistons a little bit. The other two active teams in Detroit right now. Small sample sizes, like microscopically small, but nothing's more fun than like early seasons reactions and potentially overreactions. So let's do it like this. Let's do you can do a Pistons or Red Wings. We're not going to do one than another. Just basically throw out anything that you've seen. We'll go in a triangle.
These teams are not talented to make the playoffs. That's the first thing. We are not talented to make the playoffs. The Pistons could throw out there, we have Blake Griffin. We have a superstar. You're not making the playoffs. Let's be honest, you're not. We are in rebuild mode. Both teams, Pistons and Red Wings, are in rebuild mode. Pistons, I don't know if they're better off than the Red Wings because the Red Wings have recently gotten rid of some of their bad contracts. Yes, the Pistons also did. But you have the second worst contract in the NBA. You have Blake Griffin on your roster.
I love
the
Blake.
rebuild, and I like the GM and all his moves that he made. I'm questioning some of his methods in this free agency, but I like that he acquired picks. Now the Red Wings got absolutely, I don't want to
Posed?
absolutely hosed. You can put any word you want there in the draft lottery. Because no playoff team deserves the first pick in the NHL lottery.
Are you listening, Gary Bettman? Are you listening right now?
Rigged. But the Red Wings, they lost this afternoon 3-2. Had a 1-goal lead early in the first, blew it, lost 3-2. But I am trusting everything that Yzerman does.
Yes.
Trusting
We
it. I
believe
want
in
it to the
Steve.
grave.
Yzer
Both
trust.
teams are in rebuild mode, so they're not very good. And the Red Wings still have to wait to get a couple more contracts off the books. They signed a couple pieces of the offseason, but it's either 1 or 2 year deal. And I think Yzerman did that as planned. So within 1 or 2 years, he'll have his guys on roster, a bunch of cap space to make a splash and make a long playoff run.
Oh yeah. To follow up on that, Evan, you said that. Is there a free agent? I think of us three, you're most plugged into hockey right now, and we'll try to get up to there. I aspire to get to that level. But what free agent, when we have these stacks of cash, is like a guy that you would love to see in Detroit? Do you have one?
I don't have one. I thought we would sign Torrey Krug last offseason. Played at Michigan State. I thought that would be somebody that you could sign to a long-term deal. You can build around, but he went for high dollars to play for St. Louis, which it makes sense. They're a playoff team.
I'm going to try to sound smart here as a hockey guy, but I just seen the name. We played him today, actually. Pierre-Luc Dubois from Columbus has said he kind of wants out of there. Like there was some fire there in Columbus. Could be an interesting guy. I'm not sure they're in a position this year to be making moves like that because they're still in the rebuild phase. But just a name to keep an eye on. I mean, he had a sick semi-breakaway deep goal today, and he's just a good player. So just someone to think about. And I think it's good that Evan went first there, looking back, because he said the main point that these are not playoff teams, and I'm probably gonna say mainly good things about them from watching them. Just I'm gonna go optimism, but I want it to be noted. I share the same thoughts with Evan. We're like, let's not get carried away. These teams aren't crazy. Rapid fire. Jeremy Grant is legitimately a good basketball player, and his 3-point shooting is is surprising. Like that was a big question when he came here. I hadn't watched a ton of their games. I know he had some good bubble performances, but the dude shoots the 3-point ball very well. Alex, thoughts?
All right, Red Wings, bad hockey team, but Zadina is a bright spot. I think he's played very well through 2 games.
Philip, I think it's Philip. Spelled weird. Philip Zadina is a great behind the net passer. I think he's already had like 2 were assists and another one today that could have been a goal. The guy knows how to win pucks deep and make passes from behind the net. And he's 21 years old. So huge bright spot for the Wings.
Another bright spot, this time we'll go Pistons. Sadiq Bey is really emerging already. I think he's already taking some of the older guys' spots. He's getting a lot more minutes.
Sorry, Svi.
And he's knocking down threes. Surprising because his jump shot is not pretty.
No.
But he's knocking down threes. He's a winner from Villanova. I think we got a good steal in the draft with him.
Yeah, awkward looking shot. Other Pistons rookie, Isaiah Stewart. Like Dan Campbell, I want to run through a wall for Isaiah Stewart. I don't know how. He's not a very good defensive rebounder, but he's one of the best offensive rebounders in the entire NBA because he's just a menace down low. Tried to fight Giannis, or Giannis tried to fight him in a game because Isaiah Stewart, tackled him on a box out with a minute left in the game. And he said he, watched all the Bad Boys tapes and 03-04 Pistons. So he's done a great job of being a fan favorite. And I think he's the Energizer Bunny role of the Pistons for years to come.
My last take on the Pistons, Blake Griffin is not the same player at all. He's washed up
For now.
His contract is hurting our roster tremendously, and I think it's time to, if you can somehow get someone to trade for him, you absolutely have to do it because he is just not the same player. He's not going to take your franchise anywhere.
Oh, little teaser there for our last question. That might be incorporated in mine. Not to spoil anything. Last thing I'll say, I think we're witnessing a Josh Jackson revival in the NBA as well. He's only 23, which is insane to think about because it feels like he's 20. If you were to ask me how old is Josh Jackson, I would have said 29 before knowing it. He's our age, crazy, and I think he's doing well, which is my main point of the Pistons. I believe it's early, but Troy Weaver does have an eye for talent. He can identify guys that may not be looked at as highly in the league and knows who's going to be good. Because a lot of people question paying Jeremy Grant $20 million a year, and you can debate, they're rebuilding. Should you do that anyways? At the end of the day, it's a good contract thus far. He seems like he can be the guy. Now, like Evan was saying, and you guys said, if Blake, it depends on what you want. If you want to rebuild, you don't really want them to be good. But if Blake got back to old form and you have Jeremy Grant as well, that's an 8 seed if they both played to their capabilities. Last thing I'm going to get into, I don't know if the Red Wings are going to score many goals this year. It just seems like their offense is not good. If you watch other hockey games and they're 6-5, and the Red Wings are grinding for 2 to 4 goals in a game. So they're scrappy, but I don't think they're going to score very much. Anyone have any last hitters before the last question?
Pistons absolutely should just tank. There's no point to try to push for the playoffs. They're not a good basketball team. They're not going to win if they get into the playoffs. So why go? It's just not worth it for me. So I think absolutely tank. And then Red Wings, like I said earlier, they're just not very good right now. But I trust Yzerman to get there. Maybe one, probably not next year, but I think 2 years from now we have a real chance to compete and be decent in the playoffs.
I think my last point would have to be is with all the young talent we have on both rosters are coming up, you got to start hitting on the drafts. You can't miss on a draft. You can't miss on a first-round pick. Otherwise, this can put your program or franchise back. So we just got to hit on the drafts. Yzerman and the Pistons got to hit on the drafts.
Yeah. I would say the last segment is going to rotate a lot on this show. But right now, since we're at the start of the year and 2020 was so terrible for everyone and Pistons and Detroit sports. Detroit sports have been bad for a while. The question is, what would have to happen in 2021 for you to consider this year a success for state of Michigan sports? Now, I'm going to let Evan go first. I just want you to know we didn't really give any rules about this. You can just do one team. You can do what every team would have to do. You just rip it off, and then we can react afterwards. Evan, the floor is yours.
First, you would need to pray to the heavens, and you need some special magic for any team to have a special season.
Okay.
I'm talking pro sports. College is a little different. I'm talking these pro sport teams. They're all bottom feeders right now. But for those pro teams to have a successful season, we need a playoff team. We need to find a playoff team. And how sorry it sounds, the Lions have the best chance for a playoff spot because all the other teams are rebuilding. The Lions are about to be in a rebuild, but they have the best shot in the playoff.
Evan,
now, college-wise, since it's basketball season, I think for a successful year, a Final Four. One of these teams have to make a Final Four run. I think Michigan's more equipped to do it than Michigan State, but I think a Final Four would consider to be a successful year.
Evan, you surprised me with not college, but with pro. The fact that you said playoff was going to make it a success, it makes me feel like worse about mine because mine don't even sniff the playoffs and what would make 2021 a success because that's how negative I am about like this upcoming year in sports. So Alex, you want to go?
Our fans are dying. We're sick of losing. Give me a
need
playoff team.
We need it back. All right.
I can jump in. So I'm going to start with 2020 for Detroit professional sports might be the worst sports year for a city in America ever.
Rip.
Every team was terrible. Terrible. No team was even sniffing playoffs. It was just a terrible, terrible year. Plus, you have COVID. It's already the worst year of everyone's life. So the sports in Detroit are bad. Let's start there. Like what Evan said, mine was, can a team get to the playoffs and give us some sort of hope? But because Evan went that route, I'll back it down. I want to see on each team a star really emerge because I think superstars can carry you into the playoffs and it's a good building block. So I'd like to see stars emerge on our teams, young guys. I don't need Blake Griffin to revive himself. I really could care less if he does. That's on pro. For the college ranks, I would say for Michigan or Michigan State, Final Four would be obviously good. And then for football, my expectations are low for both programs. I would say for Michigan State, 7-5 and a bowl game, maybe a bowl win would be nice. Basically, this year was Mel Tucker's year 0, so year 1 getting a bowl win would be nice. And then for Michigan, I'm not a Michigan guy, but if I was Michigan, it can't get worse than last year. Jim Harbaugh is expected to do all these great things in Ann Arbor, so for them, I think it's get to Indy. You don't even have to win. But get to Indy for Michigan football fans to be a success, I would say.
I'm just going to rip through these. Lions, I wrote, play important football games past Thanksgiving. That is all I want for success. That is a successful year. Pistons, first pick. Wings, first pick in drafts. That's what we need for success. This one, Tigers, I legitimately wrote, I don't know, good pitching, question mark?
It has to be out of front office.
Yeah, okay. If the Pistons have, or Tigers, excuse me, holy, this is going to be hard keeping all these teams track. Tigers, if they have a good pitching season of the young prospects, I think that's a success for 2021. I just stayed in U of M because I didn't want to swerve into the MSU lane. Basketball, at this point, I think it's fair to say Final Four, like you guys said, has to be success because they've already shown they can play at a high level. Football, 10 wins. Let's just get back to the baseline pressure of 10 wins for a success. Don't need Indy. Let's not get crazy. Let's have a good year. I'd like to see J.J. McCarthy play, and then we can build on that from there.
I would like to say also, I think, as Evan and I said, the playoffs, if anyone's got a decent chance, I haven't said the Lions, but I think the Tigers could surprise people depending on how well the young prospects develop. They weren't that far out of the playoffs in the shortened season last year.
Stop.
You got a new manager. He cheated, but he's good. So you have a good manager. You don't have old Rod Gardner anymore. So I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance they could be competitive past maybe July.
I think the only teams that could, and they're not, would Red Wings and Pistons would be more likely because hockey is the sport where, like, I don't know, the gap's so small between the best and the worst teams on most nights where, like, you could fall your way into the playoffs. And Pistons is like I said, if Blake has a revival hits his stride, they have enough guys to make it and be an 8 seed, but I don't see any of them making it.
No, I don't either. But I'm just saying, if there was some hope,
Not the
maybe
Tigers.
you get hot with the Tigers, the pitching rotation finds something.
No.
Your manager starts banging on drums, maybe we have a chance.
Michael Fulmer's so back in Alex's mind.
Realistically, I don't think anybody is sniffing it. We should all just hope for good draft picks and make sure we hit on the draft too.
All right, so let's wrap this thing out. Housekeeping, since it's the first episode, I think Monday night is going to be typically when we try to record these, and so you can expect to listen to it sometime on Tuesday for people following along to know when it's probably going to come out. We might sprinkle in some live, not live, but post-game reactions of a game for our teams in the middle of the week, like if it's worthy, like if Michigan loses to Maryland last night or tonight. this time stuff is hard. Tonight, Tuesday, when you listen to this, might have to hop on here and just get my sad boy hour thoughts out. But other than that, follow our social accounts. It's at Shot of MS on Instagram and Twitter. Shot at Michigan Sports. So follow us on there, and you'll see clips from the show and listen to this puppy on iTunes and Spotify. Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers.